I don't know where we are on that, but given the fact that our communications with Harry needs to go through you, I'd like Harry to send around to the board some written confirmation of that extension.
I'll make sure he sends one out. Okay. I did talk to him a few days ago about it, and verbally he gave me that he was going to the DCA for an extension. So I will get it in writing for sure.
Yeah, because I don't want there to be any misunderstanding with the DCA about our due dates.
Yep.
And I want to make sure that we are in compliance, because that's the last thing that we need is to run afoul of something that's clearly in writing. And then hopefully Matt will bring back some options for the board to consider for individuals to be monitors, and then we'll be able to consider those.
Right.
Excellent.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Do we have any idea what the extended date is?
I believe it was January 3rd. Right?
January 3rd. January 3rd, and according to what Matt had briefly said, that there was a potential if we needed to get another 30 days, February 3rd. But again, my ask is that we not. Sounds like Matt is engaged,
right?
Which is great. I just don't want to push that because we may need that cooperation from the DCA and other places. So
that'll be a priority. We'll make sure we get that squared away.
I have no doubt about it.
Okay. Tim, you're welcome. Tim Martin has just joined us. Welcome, Tim. Tim is our lobbyist in MBI Luxor. I'm going to turn the floor over to Tim. If you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
You guys are okay with it?
Sure.
Anybody read any neat stories in the news lately? No, it's pretty quiet out there, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Tim Martin, MBI Buckshop. Steve was kind enough to ask me to come and give you all an update on what I'm sure you're curious about, and that is legislation that's being debated in the Senate and the Assembly currently. Partly in response to the SCI report, partly in response to just a decades or generations old argument over how humane law is enforced in the state of New Jersey. What's grabbed the most headlines lately is Senate Bill number 3558, sponsored by Senator Raymond Lesniak. It's grabbed the most headlines because it's made the most progress. It was released a couple of weeks ago from the Senate Economic Growth Committee on the day, or actually just a few minutes before it was introduced, which presented its own challenges in terms of having to testify against a bill that you haven't read but know that you oppose. We've been there. But it started a very important conversation that we're confident is going to yield positive results. So what I wanted to talk about this evening is sort of the short, medium, and long-term response from the New Jersey SPCA to the current political discourse. So S3558, as you're probably aware, so I apologize if I'm telling you stuff you already know, would obviously at first disband the New Jersey SPCA, eliminate it as a law enforcement infrastructure, ask county prosecutors' offices to establish an animal humane law enforcement task force, assign somebody from the sheriff's department of that county to be the chief humane law enforcement officer of that county, and then ask municipalities to each one appoint a humane law enforcement officer who would then work through that chief law enforcement officer and county prosecutor's office to enforce Title IV. The towns would have the option of hiring one of you guys. They could promote or better train existing law enforcement officers or animal control officers. But at the end of the day, the general idea there is to transfer the responsibility of humane law enforcement from the New Jersey SPCA volunteers to public sector employees. The bill was released, again, unanimously from the Senate Economic Growth Committee, and it slowed down a little bit in the Senate Budget Committee. I thought we had a really good opportunity to explain our side of the story and some of the problems that municipalities and counties would face in trying to implement such a sweeping and relatively immediate change to the last 150 years of how we've gone about this task. So short term, the idea is to get the legislature to pump the brakes a little bit on this thing and think their way through what this would cost counties, what this would cost municipalities, and do you really want to walk away from a good infrastructure of dedicated professionals, albeit volunteers, but well-trained and well-vetted people who are willing to serve their state and the animals in. And that is a conversation that we're going to be having between now and January 9th. The bill is pending right now before the Senate Budget Committee. We know that the Senate Budget Committee is going to meet at least 2 more times, including this Thursday. So we'll be there to continue telling our story and taking this opportunity. But I got to tell you, the more we get the chance to tell our side of the story, the more municipalities learn of this effort, the greater the opposition to such a sudden and drastic change grows. Not making any promises, but that is the legislative strategy short term. Medium term, I'm talking over the next 6 months, is, well, we know that when the legislative session ends, almost immediately the next one will begin. A lot of these bills will be reintroduced. They're going to need a new sponsor in the Senate, should we prevail in this session, because Senator Lesniak, who's the primary proponent of this legislation, is retiring. So, and there's going to be a lot of new members. I'll give you a great example. Animal bills typically go to the Senate Economic Growth Committee. There's 5 members of that committee, 3 Democrats and 2 Republicans. 2 of those 5 members are retiring. That's the kind of changeover that we're going to be dealing with. So even if we're successful in slowing this bill down over the next couple of weeks, we have a lot of educating to do. We're going to have a lot of new members to talk to. We're going to have new sponsors of this legislation that we're going to want to work with, and again, tell our side of the story, and try to defend the New Jersey SPCA as the resource that it is to the state. Long term, we have to be mindful of the fact that this is an important conversation that we're having. Changes do need to be made. Changes need to be made by the state of New Jersey, operationally by the New Jersey SPCA, statutorily by the legislature. And this is, really, while it started off as what we thought was an overreaction and probably a threat to the way we would like to see things done, it's turning into, hopefully, a really positive conversation about improving upon the way we go about enforcing the law, improving upon the way that we interact with our county prosecutors and with the state of New Jersey, and with our local law enforcement. So we can get some good out of this as long as we're mindful of the fact that this isn't just about killing a bill. This is about taking a real sober assessment of the fact that certain changes need to be made, and seeing that opportunity. So, short term, pump the brakes on what we believe is not the greatest idea in the vessel of S3558. Medium term is prepare for the next legislature and make sure that we don't have to start from scratch as some newer members come in. And long term is take this opportunity to fix some of the problems and apply some of the lessons that we've learned in the last 10 years. That's the plan from MBI Gluckshaw.
I have a question.
Sure.
Who are the 2 that are retiring from that original committee?
From the Senate Economic Growth Committee, Senator Joe Carrillos is a Republican out of Monmouth County, and Senator Raymond Lesniak, who's the sponsor of the bill and a Democrat from Union County, and chairman of the committee. So that's, I just use that as an example of, every new session you have new members, and sometimes when we've been doing this for as long as we have, we sort of get used to the facts that we know, and it's easy to lose sight of the fact there's new people that we need to go out there and meet and tell our story to.
And Tim, you may want to make the point that with a new speaker coming in, there could be a change of chair.
Oh, yes. Thank you. I do want to make that point, Matt. Thank you for pointing that out. No, that's another important thing. In the Assembly, while we don't anticipate a lot of changes to the leadership structure and committee chairmanships in the Senate, with the notable exception of the Senate Economic Growth Committee, the Assembly is going to be a very, very different landscape. There's a new speaker coming in, there's a new leadership structure coming in, and a lot of the chairs of the committees that we deal with right now may not be chairs next year. None of those committee assignments have been announced, but you know, there was a time many, many years ago where we all went down to the State House in a large group, and some of you were a part of it, and met as many of our legislators as possible. I don't know if you guys are parts of other organizations that have sort of like Hill Days, you know, where you go down to Washington and try to meet as many of your congressional representatives as possible. That might be a useful exercise, particularly because, as Matt said, we're going to have a lot of people in leadership and running committees that haven't been there before. We don't want them starting from scratch when we have a beneficial historical perspective that we can lend to them.
Anybody else have any questions or comments for Tim? No?
I put you all to sleep. It's terrible.
Tim, thank you very much for that.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate it.
You guys know how to. I apologize. I do have to run to that other meeting, but if you guys have any other follow-up questions, most of these guys up here know how to get a hold of me. So please feel free.
We will.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks,
very much.
Thanks, Tim.
Alrighty, moving on. Unfortunately, with our treasurer not here, we hadn't voted on the October bills at the last meeting, but...
Table. Table.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have a second on the table?
Just discussion, does that mean that they are not gonna get paid?
No, actually, I think they were paid. We just didn't have an opportunity to discuss them because they weren't available. There was nothing out of the ordinary in them, but everybody should have an opportunity to review them and just officially pass them.
Yeah, I mean, I'd also like, even if we don't have a meeting, I'd like to have them sent around the board so that we can see that.
I was anticipating Matt here tonight.
Understood. Just if you could communicate that
Of course.
to Matt, that would be helpful, that the board meeting alone should stop the communication.
Yep. Okay, moving on. Under old business, Nova software. We were going to make the crossover from the CCRS to Nova in December. We've pushed that back because there were a number of issues with Nova that didn't really translate to the CCRS. We were trying to make Nova act just like our CCRS, and it doesn't. And so we know we need to adapt a little bit. So Michael Peters has been working with their tech department and kind of getting things more cohesive, where things that we need to do will be able to be done. They make changes twice a year to their software. I think April is their next.
Yes.
April is the next revision. A lot of the stuff that we've asked for, they said, is doable and would benefit other departments as well. They wouldn't ordinarily just do it for us. It doesn't work that way. But they said they do see benefit in this because they do want to go to other SPCA's around the country and market the software. So in that sense, it's good that we're kind of pioneering the way. We're going to push back our crossover to Nova for, I guess...
Until after the next release.
Yeah, so we're going to have to talk. I'm going to talk to Nova, or Frank, or one of us will, because our contract starts in January, I believe. We're going to see if they'll push it back till April, so we get a full year out of it without just, spinning our wheels. It looks like it's obviously it's a good software system, or we wouldn't have gone to it. But did you have any comments? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
It looks like it's going to be a really good system for us. We started training people, but we kind of stopped because we didn't want people to train the wrong way. We want to have them train with the correct nomenclature. Things that are labeled one way in one system are labeled that way in the new system. And there were all these workarounds that they said, stop, let's not do it that way. Let's get it done right, the first time. So they're going to make the changes that we've requested, and we're going to push this back a few months. Okay, on to new business. Trustee Amato, you had